Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to a part two of our postseason review for the teams who didn't make it. I'm here with Moody and Isaiah. How we doing today, guys?
It was good, Eric, here for some. I guess the way you could put it is pre-off-season talk.
Yeah,
Something teams are being shipped off to the.
teams are going fishing, and we just got to run them down the list one at a time.
All right, so you can watch part one on another video. Today we're starting with pick 10. The Jets have that pick, but we already talked about them. So it was Seattle's original pick. So let's talk about Seattle.
So you love to trade 2 first-round picks for a safety, be picking in the top 10, but not having your pick actually.
It's tough because Jamal Adams got hurt, so that made things even worse.
Would they have been outside of this pick if he was healthy?
Maybe, because they did fight in the end. They showed some fight at the end. They beat Arizona the last week of the season. They beat
they beat San
not
Francisco
Chicago, but who did they play after the Chicago? Because I kept up with them because
that was Detroit. I think they blew out.
Yeah,
Detroit.
yeah. So in the last game for Russell Wilson in Seattle. So as of now, Pete Carroll is still coaching the Seattle Seahawks. Now they did toss 2 coordinators overboard today.
Couple scapegoats.
So I guess that's where we started. This is basically a Pete Carroll and Russell Wilson will both be there next year, or neither, or just one.
As of right now, I'm going to go with just one, and I think it'll only be Russ at the end of this. I think Seattle has to make a decision at this point because I don't think Russ is going to want to be in Seattle as long as Pete Carroll is around calling the shots. So if they're willing to offload Russell Wilson, then go ahead, blow it up, do what you got to do to try to recreate. Although it's way better to build around a quarterback than it is around anything else, draft picks, as Seattle has found out. But the other option is to go with Pete Carroll and trust that he knows how he's turned your organization around, and you trust that he knows what he's doing, and maybe that he can get another chance at a rookie contract, QB contract, that he can work something out. Or you keep Russell. I think you keep Russell.
So you're going to win one or the other. They're going to keep one.
I think they're going to keep one. You got to keep Russell Wilson, the quarterback, because it's hard to find those. As Seattle has shown throughout their entire history.
And that's why, in my opinion, as the signs point to it, I don't think they're getting rid of both. I think the ownership will force both hands. Both are on the contract. They'll reorder the furniture in the room and tell them to get back at it. Say that blame the season of injuries, and hopefully they can fix the offensive line in the offseason some more.
Haven't we been saying that for like 10 years?
They try. Eric, anything else to say about Seattle?
I agree. I think it's one or the other. I don't think Russell wants to come back if they come to him saying we're keeping Pete Carroll. And out of a head coach and quarterback, I think you need to pick the quarterback because he's the one actually on the field making the plays. So I think you would have to go there. So I don't see them trading Russell Wilson. I just don't. That probably hurts your feelings, Isaiah, since the Giants would probably be one of those teams.
They're focused on Deshaun Watson now. That's what they moved their bandwagon to.
I think they're focused on anybody, but we'll see.
But yeah. I don't think they're finding out this year that trading 2 picks away for a non-quarterback is not the move.
All right, terrible idea.
Yeah, let's keep it going to pick 11, where the Washington football team will be picking. What do we think of this season, and what moves do they need to make?
As I said last year, the team that needed to win the division the least last year was the Washington football team because they probably need to be adding more high-end, top-end talent to a roster that was close but not quite there. And that's basically what happened this year. They were stuck with Taylor Heineke after Ryan Fitzpatrick went down in week 2. And whatever ceiling their roster had apparently that people thought their roster had went out the window when you realized that their quarterback play was never going to be good enough. They have a lot of different ways they can go. I'm a little surprised that Ron Rivera is still around. I thought they made it sound like they expected some progress.
He lost the war of the clown shows between him and Joe Judge. So
it's just like, I'm a little surprised that they kept Ron around, but he got into the playoffs one time, so you're thinking they maybe can build on it, even though he has no winning seasons with them, and he has like 3 winning seasons in 14 years. So like
that is true. We do believe Ron Rivera is overrated here.
So
all we do is talk.
So they're currently gonna keep up with that. I think the biggest news for Washington football team this offseason is their name change.
We are going to get a name finally.
I think that's going to be the most interesting storyline we get. They're going to obviously go. I think they're going to run it back with their head coach and most of their roster. Maybe they draft a quarterback at 11 if they find a guy they like. If not, they might just add another piece and keep it going.
I'll start my bold. I believe Denver and Washington football team will be the teams that trade for the veteran quarterbacks. It's quarterback or bust in Washington. Maybe they find a young guy that they like. But being that the pressure that they're under, Ron Rivera is probably going to want a veteran guy because he's a defensive coach too. So, I mean, look out for, I think, Aaron Rodgers is going to be the jewel because he's the best of all the guys available.
I'd be shocked if he wanted to play there, but I understand what you're saying.
And so I think they'd probably have to go get a guy maybe like a Russell Wilson.
Maybe hometown.
Everybody says that Deshaun is linked with Flores, so that probably is not going to happen. Maybe they just have to settle for Kirk Cousins, which would be the meanest turn of irony of all time. But
they can't go get like a Jimmy Garoppolo. If you go retrack Kirk Cousins, you at least do it cheaper with Jimmy Garoppolo.
We'll see, but they know Kirk, so it's quarterback or nothing for this franchise, and that's really the only thing holding them back. Eric?
I agree. I mean, I think they should go get a veteran so they could use this pick for a little bit more offensive line help. I mean, they have a good running back core. They have an elite weapon on the edge and a good defense. So they're really only one quarterback away. So, and from being a truly competitive team. So
hopefully they stay that way, though.
All right, let's keep it moving. Pick 12 is owned by the Minnesota Vikings. Fired their coach, Mike Zimmer. And what else do they need to do or who to bring in?
They got rid of the GM who was there for 16 seasons. So, wow.
Yeah. Their team, like, they pretty much have to detonate it at this point, right?
Me and Moody are in agreement that they should detonate it and start over. But from the people that they've interviewed, all they've done is retreads.
Yeah.
So it sounds like they're going to try to keep pushing along. They have Kirk Cousins. They have Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen. They have Dalvin Cook. They have nothing on their defense really except for outside of linebacker and Daniel Hunter,
who's never healthy.
And that's why I believe they should blow it up. But, I mean, they might try to push through and keep building. But, I mean, look at their team. How many young players do you think on there that are valuable, that are tradable assets other than Justin Jefferson and maybe Kendricks?
You could probably get something for Kirk. I think you could get the Carson Wentz conditional first, or at worst a couple of seconds, a couple of just like you could probably get a decent package for a team that's desperate for the quarterback position. For Cousins, I think you have to keep Justin Jefferson around. That's the best player they have on their team. But you could get something for Adam Thielen, I would imagine. If someone offers you something for Dalvin Cook, I think you should take it and run away. And so they have a couple of ways of adding some draft picks to try to speed up a rebuilding process. But if they go with the let's compete now thing, then I think their only option is
Jim Caldwell. That's my option for.
I like Harbaugh.
Harbaugh? Oh yeah, well I don't believe Harbaugh's available. If anybody could get Harbaugh, get Harbaugh. But I get you.
Just based on the roster they have now, the guy I like was Matt Eberflus, the D coordinator from the Indianapolis Colts, just because they have a really a defensive line that's very traditional, 4-3. Their edge guys play the run, rush the passer, those type of things, cover two type of scheme, but their linebackers who can cover very well. And it helps hide really, really bad corners, which I think has been Matt Eberflus's strength in Indianapolis, is making cornerbacks look better than what they are. So that's what I would go with them if they want to keep trying to compete, try to help build the defense up, and hope you can get an offensive coordinator. Yeah, and hope you can get an OC that can help bring Kirk Cousins, like a Kyle Shanahan for Dan Quinn, that can help bring Kirk Cousins level up to another level.
That's the only reason I thought about Doug Peterson and or Jim Caldwell, because they're already offensive head coaches. They just came off a defensive coach, and we always see teams tend to pivot away from what they had. So I mean, Eberflus is a good young mind, as opposed that's the difference between him and Zimmerman. So that'd be a flip. But offensively, I mean, Peterson or Caldwell are good options because they've been there, done
the offense is made for you, though. That's the thing. Like you don't really. I feel like you're just doubling down. But hey, Jim Caldwell knows how to turn a team into some winners. So
maybe, and also they've got Kellen Mond. Maybe get a guy that can develop him. Young talent. That's where Doug Peterson equates to.
But top draft need. They're picking 12 overall. What do we think they? If they
cornerback,
secondary, yeah, absolutely has to be the secondary or pass rusher, because you can't even have Daniel Hunter anymore.
Yeah, I would say edge or corner for their draft. But, I mean, I think – I don't know any names for it, but I think they need to bring in an offensive guy just because I think that's what you truly need in the NFL, like scoring. You can't win unless you score. So
trust me, I know.
Yep. You would know about anyone. So let's keep it moving. Pick 13 belongs to the Cleveland Browns. What do we think?
Probably the most surprising team to be talked about this early.
This has got to be the biggest disappointment of the year.
Yeah,
No, they were in my AFC Championship game.
Yeah, so that you can see that's quite the cliff dive right there. We can contribute this to the injuries. We can definitely talk about that.
One of the injuries was to
the quarterback who was hurt all year. That's really their draft pick means really absolutely nothing, I think, to their season coming up.
They drafted really good.
They drafted really well, but their roster's pretty much set at what you're thinking. Like the only thing you're talking about is
another receiver.
They do need receiver help, and number 13 will be a good spot to find a first round guy. But I think it's how do you feel about Baker? I think that's that's going to determine. Like, do you even take a receiver if you don't believe in Baker enough? Like, do you start trying to figure that into a quarterback? If you don't believe in Baker, if you do believe in Baker, you gotta definitely understand the receiver spot. The most of their roster is basically set. They just got to get healthy and get them on the field. So, definitely the most disappointing team, the most talented team, I think, to not make the playoffs.
I like the Colts, but
Colts too, two pretty good, talented football teams that just the injuries were just too much for them to overcome.
Yeah, quarterback, just like Washington football team, quarterback's the biggest thing. Now, I do believe Baker Mayfield has trade ability, so maybe you could tack him in the quarterback trade deal, quarterback swap deals, that classic Jay Cutler, Kyle Orton deal that we saw a few years ago, something like that. But, I mean, they got to make a decision because I'm pretty sure his third-year option, he's going into year 4, so they picked up the fifth-year option is what I meant to say. That becomes guaranteed now.
He's going to year 5, actually. This is going to the fifth-year option year because he's 18 class.
So it's fully guaranteed. So do you want to have that cap hit for Baker Mayfield if you don't believe in him? But he fits the system. Now, I just think they need to get some receivers that fit his style of play. Some better separators. We don't know why it didn't work out with Odell. Probably some injuries. Probably Baker's lack of maturity as a quarterback. But quarterback and receiver is probably where they need to attack, and some secondary help. If they can keep those guys healthy, that'd be nice. But some of those guys have suffered some major injuries that makes it a question. How do we feel about Stefanski?
I think you saw from their first year. I think Stefanski has proven like he has a system that gives you a pretty high floor as long as like he's got the guys available. Unfortunately, when you rely on a run game, Nick Chubb dealt with a month of injuries, Kareem Hunt dealt with a month of injuries. The O-line was in and out of the lineup after being really, really healthy last year. So unfortunately, when you play that kind of run style, you need everything to be perfect. The defense has to be good. Everybody has to stay healthy because you have to win by that style being a juggernaut. And it wasn't for them last year, so they couldn't get it done. So if they can get healthy again next year, get the O-line back, I think Kevin Stefanski is more than good enough to take them back to the playoffs. But I don't know if he's anybody who's going to elevate their roster.
You go ahead, Eric.
Maybe some wide receiver help. I also think some linebacker help to pair it with JOK would do them good as well. But yeah, I think it all predicates on what they think of Baker and what they think his future entails. I'd definitely say one of the more surprising bottom outs. But Cleveland should be in a good spot next year. I mean, their roster, like y'all said, is mostly filled out. So they should be in a good spot. All right, let's move on to 14. We're staying in the division. This pick is owned by the Baltimore Ravens.
Yeah, they're in the same boat as Cleveland, but probably a little bit worse. They're definitely a playoff caliber football team, but they saw from the Tuesday before the season kicked off that this just wasn't going to be their year. When Marcus Peters tore his ACL in practice, they lost Bateman to a groin injury that same week, and a bunch of
running backs right off.
J.K. Dobbins tore his ACL. Gus Edwards got hurt right away. Like, we know what this was for Baltimore. We know, and they still managed to show you all year that they're good enough to fight and compete and play you down to the very last whistle. But when you deal with the injuries that they were dealing with, especially with Lamar missing practically the last month of the year, they just didn't have a fair chance to really compete in the AFC this year. That's really, really tough. Harbaugh's obviously still going to be the guy. They're going to this is Baltimore, so you expect them to draft in the trenches, keep that being built up, or if they like find a secondary guy that they like in case they don't believe Marcus Peters is going to be the same guy coming back off the ACL, that could be an option. But Baltimore's Baltimore. I really don't think their draft pick is hugely big on what they're.
I guarantee they probably trade back.
Yeah,
all the value
we know what Baltimore does, but we know Baltimore doesn't really need that draft pick to really determine if they're a Super Bowl contender or not. They just need Lamar and that running game and those packs to be healthy. But like Cleveland, when you're relying on a heavy run game, if everything else isn't perfect, it can fall apart pretty quickly.
Yeah, I think the biggest question is how are you going to pay Lamar Jackson a bad year to get hurt going into year. He's also going to year 5 because he's in Baker's class, so that's tough. I would pay him, but
he's won an MVP. I think
you got to pay him. I think you have to pay him. That's what I'm saying. It's easy to pay him, but I don't know how they structure contracts or anything. Like, is he getting? I don't know. He's getting Josh Allen, Mahomes money.
I think he gets Josh Allen.
Or is he getting?
I think his injury actually might have helped him.
Everybody gets Josh Allen, and the next guys that's elite enough is usually going to get good enough. So he'll probably make about 40 to 45 million per year. Now, I just want to see how much the dynamics of the teams change when that happens. That's later to be seen, but I think Baltimore will be okay. They'll return everybody. Their coaching is great. I mean, they were taking the Rams, the Packers, and who else down to the wire in the last few games. They were still fighting with backups. So, I mean, I think Baltimore's still a playoff team when healthy, and AFC is just really tough. So you don't want to be dealing with massive injuries from the start in the AFC. As when we move on to the next two teams, we'll talk about them next. Eric, what you feel about Baltimore?
Yeah, I think they'll trade down from this pick because I think there'll be a quarterback there sitting at 14 that someone's going to want to take a chance on. But if they do take this pick, I would probably do it in the trenches with the D-line or the O-line for them. But yeah, I mean, they just had injuries. Hopefully, Ronnie Stanley stays healthy next year. But yeah, we'll see. I mean, they should be fit. I think they'll easily pay Lamar. And then you'll see what he's truly about when they're paying him all that money and have less room for everyone else.
Oh, and lastly, they do have the Orlando Brown Jr. pick, first-round pick from Kansas City.
Didn't they use that last year?
Was that last year?
Yeah, I think
they have the third round.
They got some other day 2 picks.
They got some extra picks this year too. So
Baltimore's always loaded with picks.
All right, let's keep moving. Pick 15 is owned by the Philadelphia Eagles via the Miami Dolphins. So let's talk about the Dolphins.
All right, now this is where it gets sad. The next two teams, I think these are probably the most heartbreaking of the teams that didn't get in.
So, like, initially when I found out Miami fired Brian Flores, I was shocked and taken aback. I thought another black coach was getting screwed over.
Even though you did call for his firing.
But the thing is, when you hear the stories that come out after it, you can't mess with your quarterback like that. And that was my biggest issue with Brian Flores the last 2 years, was that, like, Tua is the guy that the team has invested the franchise in. No matter how much you hate the guy, like, you gotta at least, like, work with him. You can't go out there and try to break his confidence every time he steps on the field. Luckily, he's been coached by Nick Saban, so I'm sure he's used to some tough coaching, some tough loving.
Nick Saban never told him that Mac Jones was better than him.
But I'm sure he's never had to deal with the scrutiny that he's dealt with just from his own team, his own front office, outside noise. Yeah, there's a lot of going on right there. It looks like Brian Flores lost the power struggle. So you hate to deal with that. I think Miami it's clear they need to go in an offensive direction with their coach next year. I think no doubt about it. My top choice for this will be Eric Bieniemy from the Kansas City Chiefs, another Andy Reid guy. I know everyone loves to hate the Andy Reid guys, but I think someone who needs to be able to design a dynamic offense that could, like, help get carried by, like, they can help carry lesser talented players is what I think Tua and the Dolphins need, because their offense is just awful all the way around outside of maybe their quarterback. We'll see. But
Jalen Waddle.
Yeah, I like Jalen Waddle too, but, like, you can't trust Parker, can't trust Will Fuller.
I don't like Gesicki.
Gesicki is inconsistent. And they have, I think, by far the worst OL in the NFL. I think the numbers say it. Eye test says
Giants are pretty bad.
Y'all are pretty bad, but at least y'all have an Andrew Thomas in there who looks like he can play. The Dolphins don't have anybody in mind who look like they can play.
You might be truthful.
So for Miami, another good season. They were a winning team again. Despite starting 1-7, their quarterback got hurt. They didn't win. When he came back, they picked it up. So maybe if Tua can get healthy for 16, 17 games, they can make that playoff push. But unfortunately, wasting 2 years of a good defense like that, it's really hard to have those expectations for year 3.
Yeah, as for Brian Flores, I mean, he was there for 3 years, 3 good years, 3 the first tank year, and now they had tanked better that first year.
Yeah, the problem is they actually picked it up in the second half of the year. So, but they still tanked for the quarterback they wanted. So.
It might have been the worst. That winning those games put them in a position where they had to take 2. But I mean, I was just surprised that he lost out of power struggle. I was unaware that Chris Greer was in the ability to get rid of Brian Flores didn't come with getting rid of Chris Greer, who also hired Adam Gase. So he's going on to his third head coach. So that just doesn't make any sense how what he's telling the owner sucks for everybody. Because I mean, if they were I would have pumped it because I don't believe they have anything except for a couple good defensive players that are Byron Jones and Xavier Howard are probably priced out, so they're probably trade assets more than good players for their team. Offensive line, like you said, they've drafted a lot there, but they all seem Eichenberg struggle. He's a Notre Dame offensive lineman. If a Notre Dame offensive lineman is struggling in your program, I mean that just tells you your program is probably broken.
Yeah.
We saw the kid from USC that people really
Austin
like.
Jackson,
they've tried.
Good.
Tua's sticking around, so I mean he gets to keep living that Miami life. Good for him. I think if he keeps playing the way he does, maybe he'll build up his trade value and he could get to a better second location. But I think you're correct. They have to go with an offensive coach. You said Eric Bieniemy. I like Doug Peterson and I like Kellen Moore. Those are the three guys that I think they're easy. They're all going to run very modern RPO-based offenses around to a skill set. And all those guys have shown the ability to build good offensive line or know what a good offensive lines look like. So I'm sure that they'll know what it's like to get those players up to snuff. Bieniemy is a former running back, so he's good in the run game, even though Kansas City is one of the worst running teams we've seen the last couple of years. But I think that'd be a good choice. But I think Peterson would be the best because he's got the experience of working with younger quarterbacks. And we know Doug Peterson loves RPOs.
Yeah.
And I think that's a match made in heaven. As for their defense, it's going to be interesting to see how good they are when they don't have the good thing that Brian Flores was bringing to their team, defensive equity and defensive knowledge from that Patriot scheme that was used so well. And I mean, I just don't know. I'm no first round pick, tough.
They're a team that could really use one, but they got Jalen Waddle, I guess.
By not getting rid of Chris Greer, really makes me think that they could be making big mistakes and not resetting all the way. But we'll see. Eric?
I mean, I don't blame Brian Flores one bit for wanting Justin Herbert over Tua. I don't blame him at all. But
does that mean shit on him for Mac Jones?
Huh?
Does that mean shit on him? The report is that
every time he looked at him, he was like, "You're not Justin Herbert." That's what I read from the report.
But yeah, I mean, I was kind of taken back by when they fired him, but when those came out, it's like, yeah, you can't do that. Wasn't Tua like his first ever draft pick?
Nah, he was.
Yeah. Well, it was his being there. He didn't draft him. Clearly, wanted to let everybody know that he didn't want nothing to do with that. But yeah,
then win some games without him. That's all I'm asking you to do, Brian Flores. Before you shit on your quarterback, win some games without him.
But are we moving on to the other tragedy in the AFC? Are you anything else to say about Miami?
Yeah, pick 16, also owned by the Eagles, but was previously owned by the Indianapolis choke job Colts.
Yeah, that's an ideal name, but the Colts are another one of those teams where like it doesn't really make sense why they're here, not being in the playoffs, not competing for the championship. They're just one of those teams where like most of the roster is built, decent amount of it is paid. They kind of are all in with the core that they got
traded
now.
for vets everywhere on defense, on offense,
giving up back-to-back first-round picks. It's just like they are 2 out of 3. So like the Colts are one of those teams where like they're pretty all in on the roster. They have to try to go win something and they didn't even make the playoffs. So where do you go from here? The offensive line set. You definitely need some help at the receiver position. I think you got to get another playmaker out there or at the tight end spot. You got to get another passing weapon for Carson Wentz, who they're definitely going to be riding this out with, I believe.
They gave up a first-round pick.
They gave him not even give up the first-round pick. They weren't even smart enough to sit him down for a few games. Like they just decided.
That's the biggest thing. A couple weeks ago, the Colts were coming off wins against New England and Arizona, and they were the scariest team nobody wanted to see in the playoffs.
So no one saw them. They were so scary that everyone made sure they didn't show up. Shout out to Jacksonville. But for the Colts, they're another team where their first round, well, they don't have the first round pick anymore. So their team is set. They just got to come back next year. Hopefully in free agency, day 2 to day 3 of the draft, they can find some of those ancillary pieces that can maybe get them over the top. And hopefully they don't have such a brutal first half of the schedule that it knocks them out the playoffs pretty much before the season starts.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to stay the course. I think they're pretty weak on the outside, which is okay because they're good in the interior.
Great
in the interior on both sides. So, I mean, some receivers and cornerbacks. They need some receivers and cornerbacks because we saw coming down the stretch, their receivers don't get open because T.Y. Hilton is their number one. they don't have anything at tight end except for Jack Doyle. Whatever's left of
Mo
Jack
Alley
Doyle and Mo Alley
Cox.
Cox.
Yeah, it's just,
they got Jonathan Taylor in that offensive line. I mean, that's a good start.
It's good fun. It gives you a good floor.
But I mean, to get some better play out of Carson Wentz, which they did, to get some better play, which I think some better plays would be good for suffice enough to word that correctly.
When you know that, the theme, when you're running the football team, everything else got to be perfect. And when Carson Wentz wasn't perfect, they couldn't win the game.
Hopefully, they should be getting in on the Calvin Ridley trade. Might have to give up some more assets. They're already in the all-in approach, so you might as well go full Tennessee, full LAR, and push all in and go get what you need. Back-to-back years with the same record. 1 year they're good enough to make it to the playoffs. 1 year not. Got to stop the slow starts.
Is Frank Reich, is he on the hot seat a little bit after this year?
Yeah, next year. Yeah, we know he's done it before. He's been to the playoffs, but he can't. I'm gonna always think back to the Baltimore game where they kept kicking field goals with a hurt kicker, and they kept getting blocked by who's the tall guy that blocked Calais Campbell. I mean, that game right there, because that's a game, the Tennessee Titans game. 2 games right there that they should have won those games to be in the playoffs, but things are tough. So Philadelphia benefits off of both of these teams, which is the saddest thing to see.
I don't know how you think of those 2 games before week 18, where all you had to do was beat the Jags, and you get curb stomped by the Jags.
Yeah, well, they didn't have a chance to win in that game. They got curb stomped. I'm going to think about the games that they showed. They just didn't. They don't win there. That's the biggest thing. Next year they have to win in Jacksonville. They got to break that streak.
If he doesn't
before Jacksonville becomes good,
then they'll never win there. Now it'll become a long streak, like how Jacksonville used to be when Peyton Manning was there. They used to never win there.
But yeah, I mean, it's hard to figure out what they need to do. I mean, I think on the edges, corner, wide receiver, I think is really the only thing they need to truly improve on. Another weapon with Michael Pittman and another corner. I mean, I think that's really the only thing you can do. And I would consider Frank Wright on the hot seat because you brought in your boy. You brought in the man that made you your name. And he did.
I will say he's survived. He bought it. Last time the GM bought in guys and he's worked with other guys that GMs get in. So he's quarterback friendly. His decision making, his coaching, clock management, and game management skills are lacking. But like Shanahan, at least he's an offensive genius. So you could overcome that with some offensive genius. But continue, Eric.
But yeah, I mean, that's really all I have to say about the Colts. I mean, quarterback and on the edges, because God, Carson Wentz's career blows my mind. But moving on, let's go to pick 17, the Los Angeles Chargers. Isaiah's Super Bowl pick coming in. What do we think?
Well, they were my AFC Championship pick. I picked the Rams over them in the end. But, I mean, it's tough. I mean, I think they should have been into the playoffs. I think Oakland should have
taken the time.
Taking the time.
Vegas.
I got that right last time, but I think Vegas should have taken the time. But simply, Brandon Staley showed himself this year. I mean, he's still going to be around for 3 more years, so we'll see how good his analytics work out. We'll finally know how well the analytics play out over a period of time.
Sample size.
He'll show us if he gets the chance to. But I mean, all year long, he blew games going for bad 4th downs, even though they're 4th and short. But on your side of the field, if you blow that's momentum that you could literally be giving away that's worth winning the game. We saw him do it against Baltimore, and we saw him do it against Kansas City in the second game, and we saw him do it against Vegas in the last game. This actually is the most disappointing team because they probably should have been in the playoffs after all the big wins they accrued this year. Tough. I mean, I think they've got a top 5 quarterback talent. I think their receivers are good, not great. I think they could use a real good separator, like an elite separator with speed. And I think Mike Williams' contract is up.
Yes, it is.
So they're going to have to figure out I think they'll pay him, of course, but I think they need to fix their defense. So they got to fix their run defense, and their pass defense isn't perfect, but it's the better part of their unit, but they got to fix the run defense because they got ran on by everybody.
Yeah, I think I'll start with the analytics. I'm not going to throw too much dirt on Brandon Staley because I'm a guy who thinks going forward is the right decision, but you gotta be able to read the room sometimes. And I think there were a few times where he just wasn't able to read the room the right way. I think he was too interested in being known as an aggressive guy instead of actually just being properly aggressive, selectively aggressive. And it cost him a couple times, but also it won them the first Kansas City game. It's probably won them a couple of more games throughout the year where going for it on fourth down was the right way to go. It's only bad when it don't work out. And unfortunately, the times it worked out were so loud, it cost them. But offensively, I think they're fine. I agree with you. With Justin Herbert's arm talent, they need a guy like Mahomes. They need a Hill to Mahomes for what Justin Herbert had. They need a speed burner who can so Justin Herbert can really uncork that arm of his. Everywhere else, the offensive line's pretty solid. They can fix right tackle because Bulaga has shown his injury issues are they're just too much for him to overcome.
Now, they are relying on 2 old people on their offensive line at center, too, with
Corey Linsley, yeah. So, offensive lineman, you'd like to see him try to last a little bit longer age, but Bulaga's injuries, Linsley age, they're going to have to
just never know.
Continue to invest in the offensive line. Other than that, you can find receivers, another burner guy, so I think come make plays for them and Justin Herbert. I think Herbert's good enough to make those guys into players. The real key is, like you said, is how to fix that run defense. They luckily they have a rookie quarterback, rookie left tackle on not a rookie, but young rookie on rookie contracts.
3+ years ahead of both of them.
So they're gonna have $70 million, I think, somewhere in cap space next year. First round pick as well. So they have a real opportunity here that they have to rebuild that defense, starting in the front. Joey Bosa, we know, is very, very good. That's practically all they have. Yeah. Kenneth Murray Jr. was not very good.
Linval Joseph was decent.
But like he's getting up there in
Tillery
age.
finally showed that he could do some interior passer stuff.
But they gotta be able to get the opportunity to rush the passer, and they can't do that because they can't stop the run with anything. And unfortunately, Brandon Staley is a very committed 2-high guy. So Derwin James, who's probably their best linebacker, is being forced to play a lot of split safety stuff because that's his scheme. So they're going to have to figure out how to get more talent in that front seven. They have the money. They have the cap space to do it. The Chargers are one of those young teams where it's just.
By the way, I was told Derwin James was top 5, top 3 safety. And he's down on the all-pro list.
And Micah Hyde didn't make it, and we saw the plays he was making. So it's just like, it's hard to make the all-pro team. But, for the Chargers are just a young team. So they won some games they shouldn't have won. They lost some games they shouldn't have lost. And they kind of fell into the middle. Unfortunately for them, the season came down to the very, very end of it. And their biggest weakness cost them. And I think that'll be a recurring theme about lots of teams as we start getting into teams who were either in the playoffs or borderline made it.
Yeah, I mean, you have the quarterback. You have the hardest part. Now it's to put pieces around him. I don't know how I feel about Mike Williams. I think he's good, but, like, I'd prefer Keenan Allen and maybe a different kind of weapon than Mike Williams. But if that's not on the table, then you got to sign Mike Williams again.
You know what's crazy about that, Eric? I feel the opposite way.
I actually agree with you. I think they should be moving on from Keenan.
I would move on from Keenan Allen, and I'd find an opposite because Keenan Allen's a slot guy built who's not explosive, but we're not. He thinks he's the best receiver in the football, but he's like a top 10, top 15 guy. I think Mike Williams brings a big, large body skill set that Justin Herbert has used a lot. I think a speed burner across from him would open him up to be more of the intermediate guy. Mm-hmm. But we all agree that they need a different type of receiver that they don't possess. I think it's what they wanted from Jalen Guyton, but he's a replacement level player. He's a replacement level player. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and also like linebacker, defensive line to help stop that atrocious.
That's a good call. Linebacker's a good call, Eric. That's a good call.
They just spent a first-round pick on it 2 years ago. You hate to be throwing a bunch of first-round picks at linebacker.
All right, let's keep it moving. Our last team of the pod, pick 18, the New Orleans Saints.
Yeah, we know what the deal with New Orleans is now. They were at $100 million under the cap last year. They're like 50 now, so they're going to have to do another gutting of that roster to get
trade Michael Thomas.
Yeah, you have to at this point. You got 2 years, nothing out of that contract. So New Orleans is the type of team where they fought really, really hard to compete for championships. They had arguably the best roster in the league the last 5 or so years. That's over now. Obviously, I think they should be leaning towards starting to get some of these old guys, Teron Armstead, Cam Jordan. Michael Thomas is old, but he hasn't really shown
Mario Davis.
Yeah, the Mario Davis too. They should be starting to try to offer. Now, Sean Payton is like a guy who wants to be part of a rebuilding team, so I expect him to try to reload and try to see if they can just find another quarterback. I think they're the best destination for a new quarterback. If Deshaun Watson or Aaron Rodgers or Russell Wilson need to be going to place, I think New Orleans is the place to be.
The problem is their cap situation is literally the only thing.
The cap situation, unfortunately, makes that nearly up unless they can give up Cam Jordan. If they give up all the good players they had to pair, you hate to see it. They're in a bad spot. But they have a good coach, really, really good offensive line, good in the defensive line, good in the secondary. Defense is solid. So their floor is really, really high. They got to find a way to get the quarterback position right. Jameis Winston coming off the torn ACL. Wow. We'll see how that works out for him.
Career change. What a career.
Yeah, Taysom Hill, Trevor Siemian, obviously the quarterback matters. So Sean Payton tried to make it not matter. It clearly does. They need a guy who can go out there and can make plays for them when they need him to outside of Sean Payton's scheming.
Yeah, my only thing for the Saints, this is what happens when you go all in and you don't win.
Yeah.
I think the best asset they have on their team is Sean Payton. I'd wonder how much he could get for a trade for Sean Payton. I think he'd fit perfectly in one of these places with a young quarterback like Chicago. If Chicago was to trade for Sean Payton, that would change their organization. But I don't have any answers for the Saints other than they're going to gut some more talent. They got to re-sign Marcus Williams. He's on the tag.
They have to.
He's part of that good defense. I think Cam Jordan, like you said, is a good player that we were talking earlier this week. They probably should have left him, cut ties with him, and have kept Hendrickson for cheaper. And then you'd have him and Hendrickson and Davenport, two young guys who are cheaper.
Davenport should be creeping up on contract time too.
But that's later on. Yeah. Like right now, they're in their money troubles for these last year, this year, next year. Mm-hmm. So they could have pushed that. That would have been a better way to ease the pain. But I just don't know. Don't know.
They're just so handicapped with cap space.
Yeah, Eric.
Yeah, I mean. Yeah, Michael Thomas did them no favors by pretty much sitting out this year.
And last year.
Yeah, I think Drew Brees has a thing to do with that. I think they should go quarterback in the draft if they keep this pick 18. I think Matt Corral would be a good spot for this because that's undersized, a little bit more athletic Drew Brees. I think he can – I really didn't watch football in younger Drew Brees' career, but – has a bit more like down the field capabilities. But, yeah, I mean, they're just going to have to be doing cap reconfiguration pretty much. Yeah, I hope it goes terribly for him, to be honest. But, yeah, good for the Saints. Almost in there.
Well, I guess that's it for all the teams that didn't make it to the playoffs. I mean, Of course, we'll put this to rest probably before free agency and get back with some pre-free agency predictions. But that's it.